This is your host, Mitchell J. Rabin, and I'm very glad you're joining us again today. Today we're going to have another very interesting show. We have with us a gentleman from Austria, Thomas Hübl, who is touring the United States right now as a spiritual teacher. And some say that he is walking in the footsteps, if you will, of Eckhart Tolle. It's an interesting comparison, and you'll be left to your own to make whatever decisions you want, and also about what that might mean for yourself as well as for what it is you're experiencing here with us. The main point is that Thomas is doing some really interesting work of integrating what he refers to as inner sciences and set something up called the Academy of Inner Science to help bring forth the spiritual aspect of our nature into the world, into a very practical application, if you will. And as those of you who watch A Better World with any regularity know, that's truly the essence of what we're about. Taking spiritual values and our spiritual lives and bringing it very actively engaged in the world so we can transform ourselves on the material plane. So it's really very much a blessing to have Thomas on with us today. Here we are at One Spirit Seminary, shooting on location, where he will be giving a talk here in New York City, kicking off his tour. So, welcome in. Good
Hello.
to have you.
Thank you. Good to be part of your program.
I'm so glad.
Yes.
So tell me, it's interesting, Thomas. Most people don't, as a child, say, when I grow up, I want to be a spiritual teacher.
Yes.
Usually they say, I want to be a fireman, or I want to be a policeman, or I want to be a baseball player, or something like that,
right.
an astronaut. But so how is it that, what were you doing before you decided to give yourself, or were given, that name, and what does it mean to you?
Yes, well, I wanted to become a doctor in this time. So I studied medicine in Vienna. And then, and when
like
I was...
Dr. Sigmund Freud?
Yes.
In that tradition?
Yes. And then when I was 19 already, I had these feelings out of the blue, I need to meditate every day. And I did it every day. And then when I was 26, I decided, no, I cannot continue with what I'm doing. I need some time off. I need a retreat. To somehow, something needs to happen that cannot happen the way I'm living. Mm-hmm. And then this time I already did many workshops, I read many books, and then I thought, so something...
On meditation and spiritually oriented things?
Nearly everything, in this direction. And then in these 4 years, this was really a very strong time of meditation and exploring consciousness from within. I think therefore also the name Inner Science. And then in these 4 years, I had some profound experiences. And then I came back to Vienna after this time, and then a spiritual teacher called Paul Lowe was coming to this city, and someone told me, Thomas, you need to go to see him. And then I went and I saw him, and he said some nice things about me and my energy. And then suddenly people start inviting me for workshops. They say, I want to organize a workshop in Berlin. I want to. Mm-hmm. So I followed this, and from this everything started in a way. And then from this was 9 years ago nearly.
I got it.
And now I had 9 very intense years of.
So you could say you didn't pursue that. If anything, it sort of pursued you.
Yeah, right. Yeah. This was exactly how it was. Yeah. Also, after these 4 years, I always said, listen, I'm not going. I mean, I gave some private sessions to people after that, but I said I don't go out and I don't do flyers and this. If it's ripe, life will pick me.
Right.
And this is exactly how it happened. Yeah. It came and it unfolded naturally, and it's still doing.
Yes.
And that's beautiful.
Exactly.
Yeah.
In fact, I was watching one of your videos, and you were speaking about evolution, that it just happens. You don't do it, you don't force it. Right. Evolution is, I mean, it sounds redundant, but is natural. It's a biological and a spiritual flowering, if you will.
Yes.
Right? And so you just allow it. So it sounds that is directly what's going on with you.
Totally, yeah.
It's funny, we almost crossed paths some years ago in the East Village, right by where I live, and some friends of mine said, who were now friends of yours, said, come on over. Thomas Hübl is here from Vienna. You've got to meet him.
Yes,
So,
yeah.
but for whatever reason, we didn't cross paths, but I'm glad we are now.
Yeah, me too,
Yeah.
me too.
Yeah.
And I think what you said is very right, that evolution is something that happens by an inner power that drives us, and everything it needs allowing and also the participation. Because if the door opens, you need to make a step, and some people don't do the step. So I think it's allowing that the door can open,
Yeah.
and you need also to go with it. You need to participate. And once you participate, there is a river that carries you. And I think this is also important, because some people in the spiritual scene can have the tendency to get a bit passive when it's about non-action. You know, in the Tao Te Ching, which is a book that I love very much.
Oh, it's one of my that was responsible for my first spiritual revelation, actually.
Yeah, I understand
It
totally.
came from the Tao Te Ching.
Yeah. And they talk about non-action, but non-action is also not preventing what wants to happen through you.
Exactly.
Because preventing is an action.
That's right.
So it's not pushing and not being too passive. It's with the river.
It's the balance of the Tao, which means, of course, the
Right.
way that you are in harmony with
Right.
the way life flowers.
Right, yeah.
Right, exactly. No, I totally appreciate that. It's very interesting. There seems to be a disconnect between those people who fancy themselves on a spiritual path. This is like a pet little subject of mine. And people who are actively engaged in transforming the world.
Right,
Who may not have any so-called spiritual path, teacher, discipline, religion, nothing.
Right.
And yet, in their hearts, they feel they want to make the world a better place.
Right.
So I always consider it a little ironic, paradoxical, and amusing that there is this disconnect between people who feel the higher vibration, if you will,
Right.
and yet they're too passive and don't bring it forward.
Yeah, right.
What you seem like you're very interested in this integration.
Totally.
Can you speak about that?
Yes, because I think that both of them are necessary, that our spiritual path means a deeper connection, is also the mystical aspect of life, is in a way resting in a much deeper place within ourselves, in ourselves, and seeing the world from a deeper perspective. So this is a spiritual deepening, which needs the practice. But from this, because it happens very often that people come to workshops and they have revelations, experiences, transformations, but then they go back into their old setup and they try to be in the old place with a new consciousness, which doesn't work. So if there is a new revelation, you need to have the guts to build a new structure for this new consciousness. And this means in our educational systems, economical systems, therapeutic or medical system, everywhere. So we need the new consciousness, needs a new structure. And this is pioneering work. So the people that really have a revelation and are not just on a spiritual path for feeling better, because there's a lot of well-being spirituality. And then there is a more radical...
Feel good.
Yeah, that's it. And then there is a more radical spirituality that is really transformational. And I'm interested in the second one.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Me too.
Yes, very good.
In fact, I find that real spiritual teachers, and I've had some along the path, even though I really say that life is my spiritual teacher.
Yes.
And everyone I meet, every experience I have. And I may be awake enough to get it, or sometimes I may not. But that is what I hold as my teacher.
Okay.
And it's just interesting because there's a lot of resistance that come up for people around that, about implementing the new awareness. It's like having new wine in an old bottle.
Right.
It doesn't work. And I'm going to say this, talk about radical. The true entrepreneurial spirit, Thomas, of visionary, of creating a world that's sustainable, harmonious, based on compassion, cooperation.
Right.
This is a person who might not have the spiritual background that you and I may have. But in my worldview, they are not any different than anyone who may have been sitting on a cushion for a lifetime.
Right.
I say that that sitting on the cushion may be that they were a little slow in getting the message. That's a radical statement. Could you say something?
Yes, I think we need to see, for some people it's important for the path of the soul, if we call it like this, that they are more in a retreat. But for most of the people, I think that there is a spirituality, and I think it's very contemporary, because especially now in our times, we need all this wisdom on the marketplace, because there's a strong transformation, there's a strong change of systems. So we need people that are more awake and more aware within the marketplace, not leaving life. And I think what you refer to is also that there are two different understandings. There is a spirituality that tries to get out of life, like into the nirvana. And there is a spirituality that transcends life, but it comes totally into life at the same time. And this is the one that I'm interested. How do we apply this to intimate relationships, to our working process, to building culture, to how do we create these new structures for a new consciousness, so that we create a sustainable world? So these are very interesting questions. How does this flow into a new global understanding beyond nationalities? How can we take care of a global process and practice locally very deeply, but also have a global consciousness, not just an intellectual global understanding. A global consciousness is something else, but this is something that we need to achieve by our practice and by our contribution to the world. And this is for me very exciting, because spiritual intelligence and spiritual competence is for me highly connected to innovation. So innovation, there are people that live from the future, and they are not coming only from the past. They are not just a small ripple on top of the past of life, but they are bringing in the future innovation, the future potential into now. And this is another state of consciousness. So for some time I see people developing driven by their past and by what is the outside circumstances. And then in the spiritual development, there's sometimes a turning point where suddenly the inner connection to the light or God, however we call it, to the higher awareness, is motivating us stronger than the habits of the past. And this is a very interesting point.
Absolutely.
And then this becomes my driving essence. Then the fire is strong enough that this will guide me, and this will work through me in life. And then whatever will come, you just participate in manifesting this.
Exactly.
And I think many of the entrepreneurs and many of the genius revelations in humanity came from this place.
Yes, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. It's like they have freed themselves. Well, I would even say we, to some extent, have freed ourselves from the holding of the past, the attachments, the habits.
Right.
Not completely, God knows. I'm very aware of that. But there is a freedom in thought, and then a freedom in a sense of being, to live by that creative process. That is just, it's a form of liberation. Right,
it is, totally. And it even opens the space for this highly creative intelligence to work through us. And I find it that, I think that if we contemplate how the great genius of all times, that all the revelations they had, they came out of the moment in a way. Afterwards we look back and they say, wow, what a great life, what a great person. But mostly these were people that were walking their path very authentically and very intensely. And by walking their path, an amazing life unfolded. But this is not a planned life. It's something that reveals itself by walking. And I think this is a very amazing capability and capacity if we can train this kind of being in the world, because it's in the moment, but it's manifesting the future potential of humanity through us because of this intensity. And it's not a future where we run away from now, it's a future because we are so much in the now, this can happen through us.
Exactly.
Which is very beautiful.
I agree with you. If we could understand that we are constantly creating our neurology,
Right.
And our experience is completely mitigated and modified by that neurological synaptic activity.
Right.
And we can change it in a moment.
Right.
In fact, that's the only time and place we can change it.
Right.
And that immediately gives us a new future.
Right. Right.
I just like talking like this because it's something very tangible. To me, the brain and the nervous system, in a sense, is an interface between the visible and the invisible worlds.
Right.
You know, and we can use idea to activate our material awareness through the brain.
Right. And even that our body-mind, so the sum of our physical, emotional, and mental structure, is in a way like a filter system. And we need to be aware that we are constantly looking through this filter system.
Yes.
And one aspect of my work also is what we develop, we call it transparent communication, is to see that when I look at you, I see a body sitting here, but what my brain composes many layers of information to this body, because I think that the physical body is just a smaller percentage of what I'm seeing when I say there is someone sitting here. And now I'm very interested in these different layers of information that we can read if we know how. And this will improve our healing ability, our communication ability, our culture, by just being able to perceive the information that we are anyway exchanging, but often outside of our frame. So if I don't see it, I don't relate to it. And if I don't see it, I relate often to symptoms. And we waste so much energy in communication with symptoms, so we argue often about symptoms, but something totally different is going on.
That's right.
And we need to look at this. This is going on. And this mystical awareness of this deeper place, which we find in all traditions, this is very interesting to rest in. Because this will, and then spirituality is not just a cloud of some esoteric people, but it's something that can be applied within our culture, and it makes totally sense.
You know, if you really look, Thomas, at the religious traditions, we see that there's this whole idea of community service.
Yeah.
In the Jewish tradition, in the Christian tradition,
right.
in the Islamic tradition, there's this always an idea of giving.
Totally, it's very important.
You know, it's actually, at least in the Jewish, I can say, but I don't think only by any means, it's the cornerstone of the teaching.
Yeah.
You know, the cornerstone.
Yeah.
So it's always looking to I and thou and our relationship, and harmonizing it, and you could say spiritualizing it.
Right.
So you might start on the ground, on earth, but then you start to ascend toward the heavenly by harmonizing our mental and emotional spheres, which puts us into one, in a sense, to one beingness.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So what I'm saying is that what we're saying now, in a sense, to the New Agers is, look at your own religion, almost. Do you know, it's there. And not that I'm a big person in religion, I'm really not, although I enjoy, it's good. But the basic teachings are right staring at us in the face.
Absolutely. And now it's interesting because in the modern world, many people come and say, okay, we need to update the traditions. But I'm always looking, where does this come from? Does this come from really an evolutionary additional value? Or does it come from the place where I want to make the tradition more comfortable? Because traditions, the core of the traditions, the inner core, is meant to be uncomfortable. Because it needs to wake you up.
An excellent point.
So the tradition can only...
It's not a place to go to sleep.
No, because then it's missing the whole point. Then it's castrated. So the inner core of the tradition is an awake. It's awake. It's an awake consciousness. So you can update it only with, let's say, modern evolutionary additions from an enlightened perspective, but not from a perspective lower than this, because then you dilute the intensity of the awakeness that is the core of the tradition, not the outer religious cultural grade. I'm talking about the mystical teaching. And this mystical teaching is very precious. And I think we have it in the traditions.
Me too.
And so in the modern or postmodern world, we need to look when we say, okay, the tradition is too old, it doesn't fit into our context. This might be. But then it needs to be updated from an enlightened place, not from a place that wants to make it more
secure and comfortable.
comfortable.
Exactly. No, that's a really good point. And you bring something to mind that I actually wanted to bring up to you, which is we use this phrase to be awake.
Yeah.
All the time, and of course we know Jesus said it, and Lao Tzu in his own way said it, and it's common. And more as time goes on. There are different degrees of wakefulness, and they're different kinds. So you've got degrees and kinds of wakefulness.
Right.
Some people refer to waking up, and they mean to see the deception occurring in government or in our media.
Okay.
You know, that we're being kind of abused in a way. Our perception is being toyed with. And then you have to wake up so you can see how you're seeing. Right. Perceive the perceiver. Right. You know, and step outside of the box. Right. Then there are other levels, of course, and I would like you to speak to this if you would, of waking up to our own spiritual nature and core. Mm-hmm. Could you comment on these different ideas of wakefulness? Mm-hmm. Because see, we say it and most people think they understand what it means. Yeah. But like Mr. Gurdjieff, who's one of my teachers, played the same game with the word world. Mm-hmm. He said world means one thing to someone who studies geography. Right. It means something else to someone who is a theologian. It means yet something else to someone who markets things. You know?
Right. And I think you put it already beautifully into words. So everything means a bit different things for different people. So what we are seeing within this is that our perspective is coloring reality. Waking up, in a way, means that I wake up to the fact how I am, my structure, is coloring my perception of reality, which I say, this is the world. The more you wake up, the more you know that there is no such a thing as this is the world. This is the world how it is for you, and for you, and for you, and for me, first of all. But we can wake up out of this personalized universe more and more and see the composition that composes this universe. And the more the awake part in me is aware of this composition of my universe, the more I can rest more freely within this universe. And then I have more freedom because I can see the structures that build it. I'm more aware of personal structures, I'm more aware of relationship structures, I'm more aware of collective structures, I'm more aware of reality structures. So I wake up more and more within this reality grid that I'm sitting in and that I take as real. And this gives me much more freedom on, first of all, freedom in peace within myself, within all the structures, but also freedom in allowing other perspectives to coexist. And this, if your perspective is a bit different than mine, this doesn't mean that mine is wrong or right and yours is wrong. We can let them coexist and have a creative, critical dialogue, which is fun, and we can learn something. Exactly. So I can let people's perspectives coexist. And then, because then we see, what I wanted to say is the word opinion. Then we see that the opinion, the more I'm awake, the less I'm interested in opinions. Because opinions are just reflections within this filter system of reality. So I'm not interested in people's opinions, I'm more interested in their authentic response to reality now, which in some traditions they call online talking and online action. It's not an action that refers to the past and to my conditioning as an opinion, but it comes out of an alignment with, let's say, a higher intelligence. And this is the interesting way how to be in life.
It's like the higher self.
Right.
Free of the past, in the moment. Right. And this is very different because then I'm not talking out of my personalized space, but then life is talking through me because I opened myself enough to just authentically respond to this and not to be in a way original, creative, and not just a bunch of habits that I got used to and that became my sofa, Exactly.
You know, that I'm resting
you
on.
Continue to repeat like a robot.
Right.
Or like a well-trained dog.
Right.
With all due respect to dogs. But.
Yes. Yeah, but it is like this. You see in people, sometimes you say something and you can be sure that the reaction will be B. You say A, it's B. You say
That's
Z,
right.
it's D.
Exactly.
Because it's a
Skinnerian response.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Response. Exactly.
And therefore I think is one very simple spiritual practice is, so I meet you today for the first time, so the moment is fresh for both of us. But it might be after 50 times of meeting that we create an image in ourselves of the other.
Exactly.
So then I don't meet you anymore, I meet my image of you,
exactly.
which is not who you are.
We refer to it instead of me.
Right.
Right. You're not seeing me anymore.
Right.
Or me, you.
Right. I don't refer to the energy that you are, the state of consciousness.
Exactly. In the moment.
In the moment, because you might have changed from the last time I see you, but if my image is downloaded on top of you, I relate to myself more than to you.
Exactly.
And this is also why what you said before, the traditions talk about giving, because it helps us transcending this separation.
Exactly. And stepping out of ourselves.
Right.
And out of our ordinary perception.
Right. Right.
Well, listen, I want to meet you another 50 times and test this. Because right now we're out of time. But Thomas, I want to just thank you so much.
Yes, thank you.
For coming to the United States and sharing your intelligence with us.
Yes, thank you for the interview. It was a pleasure.
For me too. Great. This is Mitchell J. Rabin for A Better World. Thanks so much for joining us. Get in touch with me at mjr@abetterworld.net and visit our website as well, www.abetterworld.net. And I look forward to seeing you all next week.